Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Clinical Trial Podcast. I'm your host, Kunal Sampath, where my job is to help you accelerate your clinical research career. In this episode, we'll do a deep dive into an important topic of clinical research, that is risk-based monitoring. Regulatory bodies and clinical research professionals have been discussing risk-based quality management, which includes risk-based monitoring for over a decade, if not more. But much of the nuances of risk-based quality management are not well understood across the industry. How should sponsors and clinical research organizations go about developing a risk-based monitoring plan? What are the advantages or disadvantages of a risk-based monitoring strategy compared to traditional monitoring? Why do some companies adopt risk-based monitoring while others don't? To get answers to these questions and more, I invited Dr. Artem Andrianov to the show. Artem is committed to making clinical trials safer and more reliable. He is the leading expert in clinical data quality and biostatistics with over 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. As a CEO of Cyntegrity, he specializes in data-driven risk management in clinical trials. Artem co-founded Cyntegrity in 2013, focusing on advancing risk-based quality management. He has been a presenter at least 28 unique conferences, including Drug Information Association, DIA, SCOPE, Society of Clinical Data Management, and more. He is also a co-author of a book titled Risk-Based Quality Management, The Ultimate Clinical Researcher's Guide, that offers exploration of risk-based quality management, RBQM, taking into account Guideline for Good Clinical Practice, ICH E6R3. Artem's academic background includes a PhD in mathematical modeling and an executive MBA. His specialized knowledge spans from spirometry, EKG oncology, electronic patient reported outcomes, EPROs, and clinical data management. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Artem Andrianov to the Clinical Trial Podcast.
Great clinical research professionals aren't born, they're built. In each episode, hear from leading experts in clinical trial management as they inspire and motivate you to become an effective leader. Welcome to the Clinical Trial Podcast. Here to help you accelerate your career is your host, Kunal Sampath.
Artem, thank you so much for joining me today on the Clinical Trial Podcast. I'm really excited to have you on this show. It's really my privilege and my honor for you to be here with me. We actually met in 2017 on the internet, if I'm not mistaken. There was an article in clinicalleader.com that I had written on risk-based monitoring, and I actually went back to it in preparation for today's interview. And in that article, it was the title was 7 Reasons You're Not Ready for Risk-Based Monitoring. That was the title of my article. And in that, you commented, you disagreed with me on my conclusion that risk-based monitoring was not for everyone. And you were right. So I want to know, 8 years later, where are we with risk-based monitoring? What has changed and what has remained the same?
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me, and I'm pleased also to be here. Very exciting topics. We are more than 11 years in this area, and still I'm wondering every day about the evolutions of these perspectives. In that days, if I remember correctly, my arguments were based on the kind of idea that risk management is part of something which we do every day, consciously, subconsciously. So it's part of our everyday's activity. Look at young mothers and how they surround their kids with risk management activities. How much mitigation actions they do by packing different things before they go out, for example, or how much worried they are when they see their child, so to say, outside. So if you watch in nature, it's risk management is everywhere. Birds sitting on the branch of the tree, and cat is approaching. Bird is not flying away. Why? Because it manages risks very efficiently. It knows exactly when and how, so to say, to fly away from the cat, because it can also estimate the strength of a branch. So it's similar in our business life, in clinical trials. It's way more complex because many people are involved, many stakeholders are involved. The processes are distributed, different centers, different cultures are included here. So it's way more complex. But nevertheless, the principles remain the same. Yeah. And that's actually what started to establish, 7 years ago or even 10 years ago, when the initial guideline appeared that we need to implement risk-based approach in clinical monitoring, but also they later in the whole quality management. So the risk-based quality management appeared. So that's actually how it started to move. So initially, if you remember, FDA has pointed to targeted triggered monitoring, said, okay, we need to estimate the risks, we need to range the sites and address it accordingly to the estimations, according to the real-time escalations. Nowadays, we are speaking about more and more, full quality management approach, which involves not only monitoring, it involves, in fact, project management, it involves data managers, medical monitors, and much wider audience. And according to the most recent release of ICH 6R3, it goes even wider to quality by design. And what is quality by design is, in fact, when we start planning the quality with risks in mind already in the planning of a study itself, so in the protocol writing. And that's actually how it evolves, or how it has been evolving since your article appeared. So it goes wider and wider, more holistically, more transparently, so more traceably. And that's the main trends today. And that's why many pharma companies currently are estimating, what does it mean for them? Because the challenges are still there, and many pharma companies are still struggling with implementations.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying the struggle is still there with the implementation of risk-based monitoring. Is it specifically because of the transition to E6R3, or is it just even before that?
It's I would say it started even before that. So generally, it's difficult to formalize. Many project managers, young project managers, let's say, they struggle to understand the concept of risk. What is risk? What parameters, what properties risk has, and why it is important to assess them prior we are entering a study, for example. It's difficult to understand that's mitigation actions. So actions which address these properties of risk, these are the best investment. This is the cost reduction investment. And if you invest $1 in mitigation action, is approximately like millions or tens of thousands and millions in a disaster recovery situation. So invest $1, you will save millions, so to say, with the disaster recovery. That's actually the what majority of pharma companies struggle to grasp, to understand, so see the value. And it's still a culture of firefighting instead of setting up a smoke detector here. So this is in fact where the struggles mainly are. At the same time, due to historical situations where pharma companies are still siloed, even between the sponsors and CROs, there is still a lot of communicational burdens. Although in risk management approach, if they're supposed to work together. Yeah, they're supposed to jointly elaborate on that, and that happens in the rare cases. Yeah, it started to change in a positive direction, step by step. Many CROs position themselves now as partners of sponsor companies. They even contribute into the design of the protocols or provide their estimations, their evaluations. But this is actually still in a changing phase overall, as far as we could observe.
Yeah. So I do want to get back to the E6 again. The R3. What changes are there from R2 to R3 that impact risk-based monitoring specifically?
Yeah, the changes are quite substantial. Although the quality management or risk-based quality management is still there, it's now labeled completely different. So it's a big kind of shift here. There is so quality by design is a bigger topic overall.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more aligned with another regulatory document, ICH E8. General considerations on clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
It's way more aligned. Yeah, they both speak now the same terms.
Got it.
Before it was not the case. Yeah, before it was kind of ICH 6 were talking about critical pros, critical data, and E8 was talking about critical to quality factors. Nobody really could grasp. Okay, is there any difference, or are they the same? Or there was a confusion about quality tolerance limits and acceptable ranges. Now it's more or less consolidated. Now it brings, ICH has brought a lot of stable ground to speak with the same terms, and there's no confusion anymore. At least from this standpoint. At the same time, also pushing, I would say, the area of RBM, RBQM to quality by design now. And as I mentioned, it expands in the time. Yeah, it's expands in not only in roles now, but in time. So much earlier, supposed to be kind of that we started to design our product, our study, so to say, our future medication, not only from the standpoint, okay, what we want to evaluate during the study, but also with what quality we want to do that. Yeah, with what quality for patients, with what quality for us as a company, what quality for regulators. So this is also very big topics. Mm-hmm. And what affects or might affect this quality. Yeah? So these are kind of so that we also have it under control.
Okay. I want to explain you the way I think about risk-based monitoring, and want you to kind of poke holes at it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I think that would be fun for people. So the way I have recently implemented risk-based monitoring on a protocol is this was a post-approval study, and what we did is I knew what the objectives of the study were, and then obviously we have these case report forms with all these fields that we're collecting. Just like for the sake of simplicity, let's say we're collecting 100 different fields in the case report form per patient. I went back and basically I said, let's make a list of all the fields. And then I had the project team, which was like the statistician and the scientists and everybody, like highlight what they thought were the critical fields that were more aligned with the objectives of the trial. Our goal was to reduce the number of fields from 100 to like around 20. Basically, that's what we were trying to do. And then our plan was to do 100% monitoring on the 20 fields that we came up with. I didn't want to make it very complicated. I thought this was like the most simplest way of kind of approaching risk-based monitoring. And then we just went ahead and executed that plan and said, okay, for all the 500 patients we have enrolled in the study, we're going to monitor these 20 fields for every patient 100%. What are your thoughts about that kind of approach or model?
So first of all, it's already a great start, and amazing that you made some these thoughts together so to say, inviting different stakeholders. That you also thought, okay, what makes sense to monitor and what you could leave out of scope. That's all reasonable steps. That's all kind of part of the, I would say, standardized process, which is supposed to happen literally in every study now. But it can go further. It can go further if you think about it. So, first of all, you started to monitor a subset with 100%. But at the same time, you could establish risk profiles of your centers. And those centers who provided high quality data for a while for you, you could reduce even 100% to 70, 50%. And remain on this kind of in a sort of adaptive monitoring mode. What does it mean? That means that you are still controlling, for example, these 20 data fields, maybe automatically, maybe manually. But then as soon as you notice certain escalations, you increase the monitoring range, the monitoring, so make an adaptive kind of strategy.
Yeah.
And then even during the monitoring visit, you are coming to monitoring visit with a certain risk profile of a center. What does it mean? It means that you have a certain expectations about number of findings. And as long as you are in your design space, so for example, you're expecting 2 to 3% of inconsistencies. You're checking data. As long as you are seeing this 2 to 3% of inconsistencies, it means that your risk evaluation of this center is correct. So after a day, you are packing your luggage and returning back. So you're not spending 3 days, for example, at the center. But in case, if you notice that there is inconsistency, there's much more findings than you expected, then you are adapting your monitoring visit, so expanding monitoring visit based on the situation you face. Yeah, so you say, oh, for example, we noticed way more findings in this particular situation. We're expanding our visit. We now monitor everything, whole data set, 100%. We establish again a risk profile of the center. Yeah, so this is in fact where. Yeah, risk-based approach can help you, so to say, to be much more flexible.
Yeah. I think we're limited. Yeah, sorry.
Within visit and across visits. Yeah, so you could go by planning visits, but within visit as well. Yeah,
I see. No, I agree. I understand what you're saying. I think, and I had one of the questions on the technology platforms to implement risk-based monitoring approach. So I think this might be a good time to talk about that. I've in my experience with this particular project, I think we were limited by what the EDC platform offered in terms of risk-based monitoring, because it had some boxes in there that said you're going to monitor these fields, but then I don't believe it let us have an adaptive approach, because if we didn't check off those boxes saying that this data was monitored, then when we ran the reports from EDC, it showed that, if you had done this adaptive approach, it would have shown like, oh, all these forms are not monitored. And it didn't really consider the adaptive approach in it. So with that being said, I want to hear from you. I think I actually am quite naive when it comes to platforms that can do risk-based monitoring and how they integrate. I think my exposure has been limited to the EDC platforms, but maybe you can explain a little bit more. I know you run a company that I believe provides a solution for risk-based monitoring, so we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, so I could summarize that all RBKM solutions nowadays could be categorized in 4 different buckets, so to say. Bucket number 1 are EDC companies, so that's what you started. The situation here is similar when you drive a car and you see a dashboard and just one lamp of your engine is this signaling. So EDC system is very essential element of clinical trials, but it's by far not the everything. So it's like driving a car and seeing only lamp of your engine. But in order to drive safer, you need fuel gauge, you need speed indicator. You need navigational system. What does it mean? It means in order to build a transparent and reliable risk-based approach, you have to make it holistic. You have to include all the recording systems in your holistic way of looking at things. Similar like you drive a car and every element around you provides the information to the center computer and you see it in your dashboard. Mm-hmm. So what are these elements in the clinical research? Usually this is a DC system, but it's about 40-50% of escalations. CTMS, very valuable, another 20-30% of escalations. Very important part, LIMS system, laboratory measurement system. These are essential elements. In fact, nowadays, we are able to detect unreported adverse events by analyzing laboratory data. Yeah. So this is in fact where it goes further and further now. Then the IVRS systems, sometimes even financial system. If you think about small biotech companies, how they if they're paying to centers correctly, all these kind of routine about the providing financial support to centers. This is also part of their risks. Yeah, for large organizations, big CROs is maybe well automatized, but for smaller biotech, small CROs, there's still a lot of issues are connected with that as well. Mm-hmm. So even financial system is a good indicator, good source of information, and then connecting between them. So you get some data points from EDC, some data points from CTMS, some data points from LIMS system. So all that collectively provide you one indicator, for example, about certain parameter, which is absolutely essential for you. Mm. So one category we started is our EDC-driven system. They are lacking the holistic way of doing things.
Sure.
Another category are the systems which are designed from CROs. Every large CRO has started to build their own solutions. So far, so good. At the same time, they all have one certain deficiency, like conflict of interest. CROs are usually heavily involved in operational part of the study. And communicating transparently, objectively information is not in their interests. That's why design of this solution is always extremely complicated. So that's very difficult to identify really what matters, really what is important for sponsors. So those who were working with such systems very commonly say you need a PhD to work with this system. You know, this is a typical feedback we hear from solutions like that. Category number 3, these are solutions usually which are like classical business intelligence, Power BI, Spotfire, sometimes Excel tables or whatever. These solutions are also great to start with. However, whenever you start noticing, I need actually a process behind. Yeah, risk management demands certain process here. For example, that certain elements needs to be interconnected to each other. Critical process needs to be connected to risk to mitigation action, to key risk indicator, to escalation. So in order to establish this traceability we're talking about, in order to build lessons learned later on, so you have to have this workflow-based approach. Yeah. And that's where usually these systems are missing the point. Plus, sometimes if you work purely in Excel or so, you're missing also compliance items, like there is no audit trail, role-based access control, all these requirements which FDA, for example, set up for computerized systems. They are not there. And sooner or later, there will be some sort of finding or even critical finding during the audit. So, and the final category of systems, these are dedicated RBQM solutions. Usually, they are designed for clinical trials. They are designed to establish and so to say, neural network of your clinical trial. Yeah, design, understand all the elements, connect them, grasp the indications about risk, performance, and data quality. Usually, they have workflow behind. So again, that's you're following the ICH by default. You're starting to use it, and you're by default compliant. There's no way of kind of missing some element. And of course, all the other requirements which I mentioned required, in fact, by FDA, for example, are also there, which allows again to go through any kind of audit or inspection by default very, very quickly. So, in the nutshell, the topics is very broad and complicated. There are many different players on the market who position themselves as RBM or RBQM vendors. However, if you look more precisely, you will recognize certain flaws, certain pitfalls in the approaches they take. And these pitfalls are very difficult to overcome. Yeah, as I mentioned, either it's isolated view on a topic, or it's absence of unbiased view, objectivity, or absence of compliance and workflow. So in order to build, so to say, to really benefit out of it, you have to have all these elements. You have to be objective. You have to have a workflow. You have to make it holistic. And from there, you build up a kind of continuous improvement cycle.
Yeah? I see. So the fourth option that you were explaining me, which is, I think, where the realm that you operate in, is that correct?
Cyntegrity is definitely in the last and the not the last, but in this category, in the dedicated RBQM solutions. Yes.
Yeah. So how does that integration with like other technologies work? Because you probably have to pull data, I'm assuming, from other technologies. And what if they don't have an open API system? Like, how does that kind of pan out?
Yeah, it's amazing that it's the most common questions we receive from pharma companies. At the same time, it is a solved problem nowadays. It is a solved problem nowadays. Integration is not an issue anymore. Okay. There are many, many approaches there. So I'm speaking about data lake, data warehouse. Even without data lake and data warehouse, Cyntegrity is capable to plug to any API available from famous vendors and grab the relevant information. It's not doubling the data. There is no need to double the to copy the data. Yeah. There is actually only the need to grasp all the data points which communicate about the risk. And this is, again, if you look at the solutions, I don't know, in airways industry, a turbine, an airplane produces 10,000 data points every second, but only a couple of them are used to identify, for example, that turbine is supposed to be switched off, because of the overheating, for example, or because of the certain vibrations. So, and the same approach is applicable in clinical trials. So again, to identify certain inconsistencies and risks, not whole data set is required. So similarly, in your example in the very beginning, you started to focus on certain data points which really matters. The same way as like in the connecting to the systems out there, so to say, which again, you need to know where and what to watch, so to say, upfront, which will be the communicator about escalation as early as possible, even before risk even appears.
I got it. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. What are, obviously there are advantages. You started talking about savings for the organization to implement risk-based monitoring. What other advantages does the organization have with RBM? And then what about any disadvantages?
Disadvantages, yeah. So it's that's a very interesting question about looking at this from different angles. So if we could summarize advantages, the most obvious are, of course, increased compliance and cost saving on the various items. So cost saving, frankly speaking, happens not only with reduced SDV or with reduced monitoring visits. It happens mostly with reducing of the various risky escalations, reducing disasters, reducing the anomalies in data, dirty data, reducing also such situations like even misconduct and fraud cases. And alone, these elements could ruin the whole study or even series of studies. So the cost saving, in fact, the real cost saving happens really by avoiding this kind of disaster. So in the nutshell, our risk-based approach makes success of a study more predictable. So it doesn't influence the efficiency of the molecule, and should not do that. But in case if you have a good molecule, it makes the path towards the submission way more straightforward, way more kind of without, so to say, traffic jams on the way. So it plans your road and it controls the kind of the path to it in a way that you come to your destination in the most predictable way.
Right.
So I mentioned compliance, risk-based approach, but also patient centricity. Interestingly, patient centricity becomes right now a very important aspect, in fact. And you would wonder, okay, how risk-based approach might help here. So, a couple of examples. Imagine you would involve patients in the quality assessment of a clinical trial. So first of all, why you should do that? Nowadays, more and more patients are playing active role in the clinical research. Some patients even funding early phase studies, connecting together over Facebook, creating some sort of movements in rare diseases in particular, and then even fund the early phases. Famous company Genzyme appeared, in fact, from patient initiative. So there are active patients who are willing to participate in clinical research, not only as a patient, but also, in fact, as an auditor of a study. And the way how it could be done, relatively simply. So you could send an additional questionnaire after a visit, 5 to 10 questions, which would ask about quality parameters of the visit. Saying, for example, did you have enough time speaking with the doctor? Or how was the attitude? Did you feel comfortable? How was, for example, have you gotten a question about side effects? Did you have enough time to communicate all that? Could you communicate in a good way, so to say, and so on and so forth. So a couple of these quality-related questions. Not every patient would answer that, but those who would answer provide a very valuable information. So from that, you could create a profile of a center, how well they are doing, how well they are engaging with patients. And you could even link it to some sort of bonus structure, in fact. So encouraging centers to pay, to provide more and more attention and, in fact, better service for patients. So this is, in fact, something where risk management could help in order to do patient-central approach and be ready for also decentralized studies, for example. So that's the advantages. You ask also about disadvantages as well. So one of the main disadvantages, if I can summarize, is that you have to spend certain time and efforts in order to understand the concepts first. You have to, as a company, go through certain change internally. And this is where many companies really struggle. It's difficult, particularly for large organizations, to change their mindset, their culture. As many, many years it was done more or less as a firefighting way, so to say. And now suddenly, or not suddenly, but gradually, we need to migrate more or less to the smoke detector way. Yeah. And it's difficult. Yeah. It's something, there are many role stakeholders who feel, their world is changing, so to say, they lose the power or whatever. So that's why there's a lot of resistance on the way. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I think I want to go back to the four things that we were talking about, and you said like the fourth places where you operate with your work, or the fourth quadrant. How much? I think one of the things I was thinking about in terms of this, not disadvantage necessarily, but just the project teams are on a sometimes very tight timeline to execute on the study and get the study going. And at what time point should somebody be engaging with you or your team? Like, is it during? I think that's like the last thing on someone's mind when they're trying to get a study up and running. So I'm just trying to understand that better.
Yeah. So again, if I would compare a study with a journey, imagine you plan a journey somewhere, and instead of sitting and thinking, okay, what should we pack? How should I plan my journey? Yeah. So what kind of hazards might happen with me, and that's why I need to be prepared. You're rushing to pack and go out, even maybe sometimes even without any luggage, so to say. Right. And then, so this is the situation you're describing. And I'm describing this situation, in fact, ideally, not it's in your interest to sit down, to calm down in the beginning, even if there are time pressure, and start analyzing, so to say, your journey. Thanks God, there is a huge support with technology nowadays. For example, you said there is not enough time. You don't need too much time to do a good risk assessment nowadays. For example, we just launched AI augmented risk assessment completely. It gives you a good template of risk assessment with 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes only. You upload the protocol, you get the risk assessment. You upload the protocol, get critical to quality factors. All AI augmented. So does it kind of help you in the beginning when your time schedule is very tight? Yes, it helps. Yeah. But is not replacing a critical thinking in this context. So it helps you to address those issues you might not be aware of. So it goes through the whole protocol. It asks a lot of questions, hundreds of different questions. It finds out the potential hazards. But you and your team need to also still prioritize it together. That's why your involvement are still required based on your experience, based on the previous studies. And the more you kind of utilize technology, the more it helps to you later on. For example, it shows you more and more about mitigations which worked in the past. Yeah, just as if it's like a good friend tells you, oh, I've been there already. Have you packed this stuff with you? So because it might be dangerous there. So it's actually like a good friend advising you from the similar situations and sharing so-called tacit knowledge, which is in the background, so to say, by many, many experts in the organization. So sharing this tacit knowledge across your team members, maybe sometimes new team members. So, and that's where study become way more planned, way better planned. Yeah. You're investing a bit more upfront in terms of the time and efforts, yes, in order to reduce the probability of certain risks, increase the detectability of certain risk. You do that, yes, but then during the study, you are enjoying way more relaxed way of conducting a study. Yeah, way more fluent. Your data gets collected kind of in time. There is no missing values. You suddenly recognize that if there is a problem with one or two sites, you immediately jump in, you immediately go there, and you're working as a consultant to these centers. You're helping them to improve, not blaming them, but rather kind of forming the culture there. And the centers react differently because you're coming not like a person who has no understanding, starts with kind of from scratch reading their data. You're coming with a prepared list of questions, what you're going to ask there. And the details of these questions communicate that you care about what they're doing. And they are reacting better. They are starting to focus on your study way better. So again, this is interaction which in its own a lot of value. So you'll save a lot of time and efforts there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing. What are some of the common misconceptions when it comes to risk-based monitoring? We may have touched on some of that while we were talking, but want to hear if there was like things that you keep seeing or hearing all the time, like the one that you mentioned about the integrations, right? People are always concerned about integrations, but what other misconceptions do people have?
The most common and the most dangerous misconception is to reduce monitoring without any other activity. So, and name it risk-based monitoring. So this is something we see from time to time. This is very dangerous. Sometimes even sometimes it produces a problem more or less for all this RBKM community. This is very common practice. For example, CRO asked to do risk-based approach, commit to that, of course, and instead of implementing and doing all the homework required to be done, setting up the process, educating people, understanding the protocols, understanding the risk and key risk indicators, instead of all this hard work, they reduce the monitoring. They just randomly select, sometimes randomly, sometimes pseudo-randomly select the centers they go. And that's actually what is really concerning. And sponsors, unfortunately, in many cases don't recognize it or recognize it too late. Yeah.
I also feel like smaller organizations don't understand all the nuances, right? So they're just leaning on the CRO to kind of make the best choices or decisions in that case. I didn't quite catch what you said. You said they will just reduce the monitoring without doing what? They won't
without setting up risk-based quality management strategy. Without setting up this process. And it can only work if you have, for example, first of all, a system which monitors the data for you every night, every day. So it kind of picks up those escalations and provides you the information to reduced monitoring visit. It can only work if you have education of your team members and they understand how to design the risk indicators, how to connect them to risk, what risks are important and not important. They understand also importance and specificity of mitigation action activity. Most common mitigation action we see retrain a site, but it's literally very, very rarely work. It's actually never the root cause, or almost never the root cause. And this is actually understanding that the more specifically you go into root cause and the more specifically you tackle that, and understanding and observing a feedback loop in the data after you have done this corrective actions, mitigation action, preventative action. So you have to see that the data has improved. You have to close this kind of plan, do, study, act loop. You have to invest into the certain activities and see that effects in the data quality improvement. So you need, in order to kind of do all that, you have to kind of invest and do homework. But then, it's not always the case, I would say. And sometimes you correctly said, many vendors, they just misuse this kind of topic, more or less, and reduce the monitoring without proper additional actions which requires to be done in order to compensate this reduced monitoring through the intelligence systems, which will help you to address those items which really matters. You need to know them.
Yeah, I think people are just trying to please the sponsor and say, "Oh, let's just cut. Let's bring you the savings," without actually having a plan that's still compliant and like will identify issues with the data.
Yes,
Did I say that right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And sponsors need to be aware about this pitfall. They need to look a bit deeper in the offerings and understand that this is a potential hazard. And unfortunately, it will be not a cost saving, but rather
expensive
and much more expensive.
Yeah.
In worst cases, again, even situations where you need to kind of rerun a study with another CRO. That's what we observed as well. Unfortunately, this is something double cost later on. So again, there is let's say there's never a free lunch in the life, and again, if it sounds too good to be true, there's most probably there is something behind there.
Yeah. There's a couple of things you mentioned about that AI-based approach that you have in your product, where somebody can upload a protocol, and then what did you say it spits out on the other side?
It provides, for example, the draft of the risk assessment. It provides the draft of the critical to quality factors. It analyzes even the old data with medical knowledge and identify medical risks, protocol deviations, underreported adverse events, or the issues with medical coding. So all that aspects are already automatized with AI augmentation.
Yeah,
that's where system technology becomes an essential element, so to say, of bringing you a good push in order to keep the compliance burden without big time kind of investment from your side.
What are some of the reasons you've heard organizations not wanting to adopt risk-based monitoring?
Nowadays, most of the organizations don't have this question. No, actual ICH clearly states you have to have it. Number one, there is no differentiation about the phases of studies. So it doesn't matter phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. You have to have something. The question is more how different companies approach it. And till now, regulators kind of accepted more or less, homegrown Excel tables to some extent. But that's actually going away. And this is, in fact, where more and more we observe inspectors, auditors start pushing the boundaries further. So Excel table with risk assessment done by one person and put in the cabinet is not enough anymore. And you have to integrate in your activities. You have to show the full story. You thought about what can go wrong. You've done some mitigations to reduce the probability of that. You put an indicator, so in case it goes wrong, you're informed early enough. And here the kind of the escalations you addressed, and you put the root cause analysis attached to that. So you have to go through the whole journey and show it to an auditor. So again, more and more, currently, again, these regulators, first of all, establish their own understanding, their own experience, and they started to push now pharma to in this direction.
I see. But what I meant by that is, what if some company wants to we'll just do 100%. We don't care about risk base.
Yeah,
does that even happen?
This is also another one of the kind of misunderstanding. You can do 100%. It is fully okay. But thinking about what can go wrong with this 100% is also reasonable to do. I mean, why the companies usually go for 100% monitoring? This is a concept which is called risk tolerance. Everybody of us and the companies as well, they have different risk tolerance, appetite of the risk. Yeah? Sure. And I can give you a very simple example. Again, if you plan a journey, you would be planning it differently if you would be a pregnant woman. You would be planning it differently if you would be a teenager.
Right.
You know, risk appetite is completely different there. And this is absolutely normal. So imagine you're a small biotech company, you have one study, and everybody is dependent on the success of the study. Right. How much would monitoring you would do? 100% for sure. Yes, there's no even exception. 100%. But should you think and plan your risk strategy about it? Yes, of course. You should still consider, okay, what can go wrong? Because even with this 100% of monitoring, you will miss certain elements by doing SDV. You know, because SDV is still a manual approach. And in modern world, computerized world, complex world, multinational, it's not enough anymore. It's not enough anymore. There are some issues, again, I'm not even speaking about like fraud cases. Yeah, they're difficult to tackle. They're difficult to notice. Yeah, but there are some issues that sometimes originate from EDC systems. There are some issues which originate from misconduct of CRAs. Extremely difficult to notice. But every stakeholder, again, professional patients, even from patients, when patients are participating in several studies simultaneously. I mean, these are the risks you want to be aware of. You want to be aware of. So again, 100% SDV doesn't mean that you
automatically
Yes, it's combinable, and in fact, SDV reduction it's your risk appetite decision. Decision which is based on your risk appetite. And frankly speaking, there are many publications which demonstrate that the efficiency of SDV is negligible. So this generally, if you would invest the same amount of money, but for SDR, for more holistic way, analyzing the trends, comparing everything with everything, you would get better results than SDV.
If you have the list of any of those publications, I'd love to add those in the show notes for people to refer back to.
Yes.
I'm happy to remind you as well. So if you can send me that list, I think even if it's one or two, I think it would be helpful for people to understand. I want to talk about the role of the CRA. I've always, for many years, I would say about at least half a decade, 5 years, I've believed that the role of the CRA is, I think, going to change a lot, is changing a lot. And I think this whole concept of flying to a site to do monitoring is going to become less and less. It will not go away anytime soon, but I do think it's going to reduce significantly. And I just feel like there's really no reason to travel to a site because you can do a lot of things remotely. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. Obviously, you have a biased opinion, which is completely fine. But I do want to hear what do you think about this?
I mean, I always feel pity to CRAs. For example, as a young mother, can you work as a CRA? Hard, very difficult. Can you still fly back and forth if you have, one or two children? If you want to work part-time, nowadays normal in other industries, but for CRAs, difficult. Again, very difficult. So how can we tackle that? How can we solve that? If we can kind of upgrade CRAs to centralized CRAs,
right?
CCRAs, so to say. They can monitor not one or two studies. They can monitor a whole range of studies centrally from one location. And then there are many scenarios. Either they can jump in on the train themselves if they see, okay, there is something required, or they could manage maybe some group of external CRAs who can do that on their behalf with additional kind of specific items what to check. Right. So I would say the role of CRAs in near future, I hope, become more and more kind of supported by the centralized solutions. Making their life, first of all, way more easier, way more convenient, way more comfortable. And so, of course, many of CRAs will disagree with me. They will say, okay, I will establish a personal contact with center. I will check, I don't know, if their refrigerator's up to date or not. They're absolutely right. And I'm not saying that visits are not valuable. They're very valuable. In fact, but do we need all this number of visits we've been kind of using before? Or is it enough to set up everything in the beginning, have initial visit 1 or 2 times, establish this culture, communicate to center what quality criteria, so to say, is important for sponsor, and make even visible for site, their quality profile, their risk profile. And imagine the situation that center has ability to self-control, self-address the issues, so to say, by monitoring their profile, their risk profile.
Yeah,
that happens. By the way, in other industries. I mean, we all have in banking industry, we all have kind of credit rating. It's the same thing, yeah. Or we all have, I don't know, in finance, in financial world, the risk rating of a company.
Yeah, like a site dashboard or like a help, like how are they doing, like from a data collection or quality standpoint. Yes. I love it. I agree with you. I don't feel like, I think the project I was talking to you about earlier, we did tell the sites, how are we going to measure success, and then what success looked like, and what other fields that we were actually going to monitor. Like, we were very transparent with them. Like, here's the things that are really critical for the study. So please do not, please give extra attention to these fields. And I think that was very helpful, because now they had a clear understanding of what was necessary for this clinical program to be successful. I agree. And I think I love your idea of like giving them that dashboard. I don't know, you use a different
feedback. Yeah, just in the form of interactive dashboard. Yes, but the feedback. What do you expect from them? Yeah, what is valuable for you as a sponsor? If you show them indicator, long time respond to query, and indicators red, and you show that every other center is doing a better job but not them. Trust me, in a week or two, they are improving immediately. It's a kind of social effect. Yes, similar. Like, again, we all do good job when we, for example, rent our flat in Airbnb. Why? Because this kind of social pressure about our visibility as a host there is visible to everybody. The same effects could be used for quality improvement of clinical trial. Why not?
Why not? Exactly. No, I love it. How do you measure effectiveness of risk-based monitoring approach? Maybe compared to traditional monitoring. Yeah.
Very good question. Very good question. In fact, it's a way more complicated and very rarely addressed topic. In fact, however, in order to do something right, you need to understand what metrics you want to see and improve. There are certain kind of low-hanging fruits, and there are some long-time improvements. Yeah. If we speak about long-hanging fruits, we touched upon reducing the monitoring visits, saving costs there, addressing, reducing for example, the missed visits, missed data points, improve the retention of patients, which we can also measure and predict. So this is the first metrics where the improvements become visible. In the longer run, you notice when you do 1 or 2 or 3 studies and you get the lessons learned from the previous studies, you establish a framework which really starts working. For example, as a sponsor who works with several vendors, you start, for example, comparing the efficiency between the vendors. You start noticing who is doing good job between the vendors. And you're becoming much more strategically there. And again, we had situations where some risk-based reports were brought to CRO, and CRO provided immediately discounts on the next upcoming studies. This is also because they saw certain issues from the previous studies. You're getting so you're observing across study information. For example, your sites, how they are doing cross studies. You're getting much more information for the future studies, for what sites you are willing to take more and more. So again, collecting their risk profiles. In fact, is a AAA site. You wish to take this AAA site into the next study right away. You get you will need less number of patients in general, because your statistical confident intervals not go so wide anymore. Confident intervals when the study finishes is actually a collection of different variabilities in the data. It's like different dirty data effects. And if you reduce the sources of this dirty data, the confident intervals go narrower and narrower. That increases the chances, first of all, of reaching statistical significance. And next time, you're getting a chance, so to say, to start a study with a lower number of patients, because you're much more confident in the way how the study is going to go.
Sure.
Then further down the road, there is a way more exciting area of portfolio optimization of your studies. So where you start noticing the risks of different studies and optimize the whole portfolio of your studies way more in the risk-based approach. When you're combining different therapeutic areas and they balance from the risk each other, So again, this is something which for senior management, for top management, gets way more efficient. They are getting way more data-driven background for high-level decisions. What study to push, what study to cancel.
Right. Okay. That I agree with everything you just said about like trying to measure this, and then scaling it at a portfolio level. You mentioned something about when we're talking, I'm going back to this four areas. We talked about EDC, and then CRO, and then we talked about Power BI type of tools, and then we talked about dedicated software technologies. When you talk about Power BI, I've seen companies implement this. Is there where does it fall short? Like what does it not do?
Workflow and process connectivity. I mean, that's where you need to. That's where usually it fails. Look at the Power BI solutions. What they usually show is a snapshot analysis.
Right.
And why snapshot is not so good? Again, it's like your balance sheet of your company. It is just the situation now. But what you're searching, what you're looking at, is actually a trend analysis. You need to understand the trend, how the process evolves. Snapshot or it doesn't matter. Trend really matters. So you need to understand where the process began, how it escalates, how it goes right now, and build predictions where it will be in the future. So that's where most of the systems really fall short. They show you the situation at the moment. However, it's very hard to understand and make your decisions on the situation as a snapshot analysis. You need to see dynamics.
Fair enough.
You need to see dynamics of that. Similar again, like when we drive, we see dynamics of the of our trip, so to say, and based on that, we do some decisions.
Right.
Right.
So
that's how life, so to say, is kind of designed. It's never a one-time moment, because again, already tomorrow it could be different. You have to understand. You have to know also your previous studies. They give you a lot of information how to make projections, because most of the time you have the same processes. Processes are linked to the people. People are establishing and repeating more or less study by study. So in fact, with this, you can also make a very precise or pretty precise predictability about the kind of how the study will evolve. And you need to you see this processes like in an interactive manner. So if you do certain activity that you notice, okay, now my risk has kind of reduced, has de-escalated, has returned in my design space.
Sure.
And this is actually where it gives you the feedback loop as well, that you tackle the problem, you understood the root cause. And you don't need to you can kind of grab it as a lesson learned for the next study.
Makes sense. Okay, so maybe let's talk about your book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good place to talk next. So you wrote this book, Risk-Based Quality Management, a Guide for Clinical Research Professionals. I have two questions for you here. Why was writing this book important to you?
Yeah, I just brought this book here with me. Good question. So on the one hand side, it's of course a desire to collect experience we've been observing and been part of various projects across the last 11 years. So just to kind of put it in some sort of framework which can become useful for those who will read this book, and in fact save all this time and all these mistakes we did, so to say, at the beginning. On the other hand side, we observe there is a huge need of kind of, in a simple terms, explaining the basic concepts. Yeah, so in making it kind of visual, making it understandable, putting it in some sort of framework manner, so that people can really get it as a kind of best practice and apply right away. So there were not very. There is no much literature around risk-based approach. In fact, still, although there are many articles in many well-established magazines, but still, kind of as a book, there is not a lot. So we saw that there is a need, so to say, to educate project managers, educate central monitors, even upper management in understanding the concepts, and without specificity of what Cyntegrity is offering. So the book is completely designed, of course, using our experience, yes, but designed for those who will implement risk-based approach from scratch in their organizations. So there are very practical examples about, okay, what risk indicators to use, in what situations, how to do risk assessment. There are very interesting tips, so to say, for example, how to improve the efficiency of the risk assessment. We even make one advice to apply a so-called poker game, when you explain a risk and everybody writes down how they feel about different risk components, like predictability, detectability, and impact. They write it down, but not showing, and then everybody opens it at once. So it's a very interesting approach to avoid, again, biased view within sitting together with different stakeholders. So all these small kind of concepts which we've been collecting from like in our projects, we collected and put in this book. And again, hopefully that will bring industry further. And again, we plan to use to collect further and further stories, ideas, and every year refresh new editions and publish new editions there. So the second edition is already getting prepared.
I love it. Thank you. This other question I had was like, what can people learn after reading your book? And I appreciated when you said like they can learn some of the mistakes that you've made, and so that they don't make them again, and also the fundamental like concepts around risk-based monitoring. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I could add that please do mistakes, but then learn out of them. So that's embrace the mistake-friendly culture in your organization. We talk about it, by the way, as well. It's not a problem to do the mistakes, in fact, but it's a problem not to analyze them after that, and not to learn after that, and not correct them. So the second time you do the same mistake is already not a mistake, is your choice. And this is something we talk about, and establishing a process of continuous analysis, continuous revision,
right?
Not blaming culture, but rather mistake-friendly culture.
Sure.
Integrating it into the continuous improvement strategy of a company, or even the mission. That's where what will differentiate you as a pharma like tomorrow, or even in the very near future, from other pharma companies, or you as a CRO from other CROs. That will be your competitive advantage, and CROs will see much bigger projects because the sponsors start to trust them. They start to understand that they care about their kids, so to say, when they bring them child, so to say, that they really care about them. And sponsors face way more predictable successes. So again, that's the outputs of all that.
Yeah, I love it. Perfect. Thank you. And then I want to wrap up our conversation with any favorite books or resources that have helped the way you think.
Very good question. So there are many good resources on risk management in general. Let's put this way. I could point to PMI, Project Management Institute. They have a lot about risk management in general. The industries and the books from other industries are useful. I have spent a lot of time on reading about, for example, how airwaves industry is tackling that, how NASA is dealing with risk management, because the situation there is way more complex. When you launch a rocket, you cannot change anything anymore. Yeah, you have to foresee everything way more in advance, as we are doing it in pharma. So a lot to learn from there. But classical books like Kahneman and Tversky about psychological biases, I mean, this is an amazing source of information about kind of how we take decisions, why we jump to conclusions very quickly, and when and how we should stop, so to say, and do kind of a bit slower thinking, so to say, deeper thinking before we jump to decisions. Yeah, so thinking fast, thinking slow. That's what I was referring to. This is the very, very important source for this type of activities. Yeah, this is the first what comes into my mind. Let's.
This is the book you were talking about, Thinking Slow. Is that what it's? I'm trying to.
Yeah, thinking fast, thinking slow. Kahneman and Tversky. This is amazing source. They are Nobel Prize winners, and one of the kind of fundamental book for understanding how people take decisions. Yeah, so
sure. I love it. Okay. Anything else you want to add? So you said PMI, risk management, thinking about like NASA, airlines, and kind of how they tackle risk management. Are there like, I'm assuming there's books written on that also, but are there like any specific books that resonated more with you, or you felt like you got a lot of value out of them?
So the books what I advise, for example, for all employees within Cyntegrity is Fundamental of Clinical Trials, which is actually very much a classical. So the Lawrence Friedman is the author or the one of the authors. I mean, why it's so important? Because we usually focus on a certain area and we do specialize in certain areas, and we miss maybe the whole clinical trial design and landscape. So how it is actually happening. And very commonly, it's very essential and important to observe and understand different process, different complexities, so to say, inside of a clinical research overall. So, I believe, and again, we are very strict in our organization that in order to build up a good kind of risk-based approach, there is a requirement to understand different roles. Yeah, so different processes, like in the the different stakeholders, and these kind of books which explain the fundamentals are, to my mind, as again, also very, very essential.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I lied when I said that was my last question. I have two more. Well, what did you do 11 years before you started your current organization? What were you doing before that?
I was in charge of data quality analysis at a big organization named Clario. At that days, it was ERT. So I was analyzing clinical trials day in, day out, and I have mathematical background, so I have PhD in mathematical modeling. And in fact, I was analyzing clinical trials, and we were finding a lot of serious issues. Yeah, so the managers of Clario will probably not be happy right now, but we are finding a lot of serious issues, and we're bringing them to the top management and saying, okay, you have to now go to sponsor and tell about it. And continuously we're hearing, oh, we cannot say that, they will ruin our reputation, or we cannot go to like sites, it's not our business. We've noticed that, in order to do data quality evaluation, you have to be kind of independent. You have to be unbiased. This is in fact where it was a high effect for me. So that organizations like Medidata, Clarios, so to say, Vivas of this world, they're doing a great job in accumulating information, but they are part of this process. They're part of this process, and ask Medidata how often they show errors reasoned by Medidata in their dashboards. Very rarely, if at all. So this is something sponsors need to be aware of, to my personal opinion.
Okay. And then, you mentioned about like the community of like risk-based monitoring. I think I didn't even know there was a community. I'm not surprised, but is there like is there a LinkedIn group, Facebook group? What is it? Like, where can people like learn about this community?
Yeah, so long ago we started a community which is called Minds On, risk-based quality management. Minds On.
MINDS.
Yeah, Minds On. So kind of if you would type in the Google, you would immediately come to that. So it's a large community already.
Oh, wow.
With multiple hundreds of participants every month. So we usually have a monthly meeting. It's completely free of charge. There are many big pharma organizations, CRAs there, all speaking freely. building up best practices, sharing it across themselves, designing some technological free solutions, also open source solutions. Welcome everybody. Again, there is a lot to discuss there to help, and we do think that pharma is not competing on risks, so they're competing on efficiency of molecules, but risk is something where we need to collaborate, and that's part of our mission.
Great. Thank you, Artem, for such a rich conversation. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kunal. My pleasure to be with you. And again, I hope in case if somebody is interested in the book, I'm happy to make some presents. You decide like 2 or 3 books from us, we could give as a present.
I love it.
And if somebody, I don't know, sets up a question or whatever, make a comment just...
Let's do that. We'll figure out a way to get people to share this episode in sorts, and then we can give them this book as a gift. So thank you for your generosity. Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Clinical Trial Podcast. For more exclusive clinical research content to get you to the top of your game, head on over to clinicaltrialpodcast.com.